A gunshot echoed through the marble ballroom, champagne glasses shattered, and Elena Ward found herself pressed against the chest of Boston's most dangerous man, a mafia boss who'd just taken a bullet meant for her. 3 hours ago, she'd been unemployed and invisible. Now she was bleeding onto a $5,000 dress, while Victor Castellano whispered, "Don't you dare close your eyes, or gore." This is the story of how one night at a gala changed everything, how a broke writer fell for a man who ruled the shadows, and how loving him meant surviving a world where trust could get you killed. If you want to see how far this story goes, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see where you're watching from. Now, let me take you back to where it all began.
That.
The invitation had been a mistake. Elena Ward stared at the heavy cardstock in her hands, embossed with gold lettering that screamed, "You don't belong here." The Boston Harbor Foundation Gala. Black tie required. She didn't own anything that qualified as black tie. She barely owned anything that wasn't from a thrift store or her college years, back when she'd thought a journalism degree would actually lead somewhere other than unemployment and a string of rejection emails. "You're going," Mara had said 3 days ago, pushing the invitation across the coffee-stained table of their shared apartment. Mara Chen, her best friend since freshman year, worked in PR for some tech startup and had connections Elena couldn't begin to understand. "I already RSVP'd for both of us. Consider it an intervention." An intervention for what? For the fact that you've been wearing the same sweatpants for 4 days, and your last human interaction was arguing with a telemarketer. Elena had wanted to argue, but Mara wasn't wrong. 2 months since the magazine folded. 2 months since she'd lost the one job that had made her feel like maybe, just maybe, she could make it as a writer. 2 months of sending out pitches into the void and getting nothing back but automated rejections. So here she was, standing in the coat check line of the Fairmont Harbor Hotel in a borrowed dress that fit almost right, heels that were already murdering her feet, and the distinct feeling that everyone could smell the desperation on her. The ballroom was obscene. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars. A string quartet playing something classical that probably cost more per hour than Elena's rent. Women in gowns that cost more than her car, if she still had a car, which she didn't because she'd sold it last month to cover bills. Men in tuxedos that fit like they'd been sewn directly onto their bodies by Italian tailors who charged by the thread. "Stop looking like you're about to be executed," Mara muttered, appearing at her elbow with 2 glasses of champagne. "Here, liquid courage." "I don't think courage is going to help when I have nothing to say to anyone here." "Then don't say anything. Just smile, drink expensive alcohol on someone else's dime, and try to enjoy the fact that for one night, you get to pretend you're not broke." Elena took the champagne. It was good, better than anything she'd tasted in years. That somehow made it worse. The evening crawled forward. Mara disappeared into conversations with people she knew, leaving Elena to orbit the edges of various groups, smiling politely when anyone made eye contact, but never quite managing to break into the circles. She felt like a ghost, present but unseen, occupying space but not really there. She was contemplating a tactical retreat to the bathroom when the room changed. It wasn't loud. There was no announcement, no fanfare. But conversations faltered mid-sentence. Heads turned. The energy in the ballroom shifted like someone had opened a door and let in a cold wind. A man had entered. He moved through the crowd with the kind of ease that came from absolute certainty. Tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair shot through with gray at the temples. A face that looked like it had been carved rather than grown, all sharp angles and hard lines. He wore a black suit that fit him the way armor fit a soldier. Perfectly. Lethally. But it was his eyes that caught her. Dark. Calculating. The kind of eyes that saw everything and revealed nothing. People stepped aside without him having to ask. A few nodded in greeting, but no one approached. No one smiled. The respect in the room wasn't warm. It was the kind born of fear. "Who is that?" Elena asked a woman standing nearby, someone in a silver gown with diamonds at her throat. The woman glanced at her like she'd just asked who the president was. "Victor Castellano." The name meant nothing to Elena. Her confusion must have shown. "You're not from Boston," the woman said. It wasn't a question. "I am, I just—" "Then you don't pay attention." The woman's smile was thin. "Victor Castellano runs half this city. the half that doesn't appear on any official records. She said it quietly, then moved away, as if even acknowledging his existence was dangerous. Elena's journalist instincts, dormant for months, flickered to life. She watched him move through the room, accepting brief greetings but engaging with no one. He took a glass from a passing waiter but didn't drink from it. Everything about him radiated control. Then his eyes found hers. It lasted maybe 3 seconds. Just a glance across a crowded room. But Elena felt it like a physical touch. His gaze locked onto her, assessed her, and something shifted in his expression. So subtle, she almost missed it. Interest. Or maybe just curiosity. Then someone spoke to him and the moment broke. Elena turned away, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. She drained her champagne and immediately regretted it. What was she doing? Standing here, staring at some probably criminal power broker like a character in a bad romance novel. This wasn't her world. These weren't her people. She needed air. The terrace was nearly empty, just a few smokers clustered at the far end. Elena moved to the railing, letting the October wind bite through her thin dress. The harbor spread out below, lights reflecting on dark water. Boston looked beautiful from up here, clean, organized, nothing like the mess of her actual life. Running away already? She spun around. Victor Castellanos stood 5 feet away, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. Up close, he was even more overwhelming. Older than she'd first thought, maybe mid-40s, with the kind of presence that made the actual space between them feel smaller than it was. I just needed air. Understandable. These events are suffocating. His voice was low, textured. The kind of voice that made you listen whether you wanted to or not. Elena's brain scrambled for something intelligent to say. You don't seem suffocated. I've had practice. He moved to the railing, not quite next to her, but close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive. You don't belong here. It should have sounded like an insult. Somehow it didn't. That obvious? She tried for humor, landed somewhere near self-deprecation. You're the only person in that room who looks like they'd rather be anywhere else. He glanced at her, and there was something almost amused in his eyes. Everyone else is performing. You're just uncomfortable. Maybe I'm performing discomfort. Are you? Elena hesitated. Honesty seemed dangerous with this man, but lying seemed worse. No, I didn't think so. He turned to face the harbor, his profile sharp against the city lights. What's your name? Elena Ward. What do you do, Elena Ward? The question she'd been dreading all night. I'm a writer. Or I was. The publication I worked for folded 2 months ago. So now you're unemployed. Currently between opportunities. The corporate euphemism tasted bitter. That's the same thing, just wrapped in prettier words. He said it matter-of-factly, not cruelly. Why come to an event like this if you're not looking for work? My friend thought I needed to get out, stop wallowing. And instead you're out here alone, wallowing in a different location. Elena felt a laugh escape before she could stop it. Yeah, pretty much. Victor's mouth moved, not quite a smile, but close. At least you're honest about it. Is that unusual in your world? You have no idea. He shifted, turning to face her fully. What did you write about? Investigative journalism, local politics, corporate corruption, the kind of stories that matter to about 12 people and piss off everyone else. The kind that get publications shut down. Among other things. Elena met his gaze and found herself caught there. His eyes were dark brown, almost black in the low light, and they were looking at her like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. What about you? What do you do? Something flickered in his expression. I manage investments. It was such an obvious lie that Elena almost called him on it, but she remembered the woman's words. Runs half this city. Whatever Victor Castellano really did, he wasn't going to tell her on a hotel terrace. Must be lucrative investments, she said instead. They have their moments, he paused. You're not afraid of me. Should I be? Most people are. I don't know you well enough to be afraid. That's usually when fear is most useful. But he said it like he was pleased rather than warning her. A gust of wind cut across the terrace and Elena shivered. She'd left her borrowed wrap inside. Victor noticed immediately, shrugging out of his jacket before she could protest. I'm fine. Take it. He draped it over her shoulders. The jacket was still warm from his body, and it smelled like him, that dark cologne mixed with something else she couldn't name. "You're freezing." The weight of it settled around her like armor. Elena pulled it closer, hyper-aware of how intimate the gesture was. "Thank you." "Elena." She looked up. He was closer now, just a foot away, and the intensity in his eyes had sharpened into something she couldn't quite read. "Have dinner with me." Her heart stopped. "What?" "Tomorrow night. Dinner. Unless you're busy." "I'm not busy, I don't understand." "What's not to understand? I'm asking you to have dinner with me." "Why?" The question seemed to surprise him. "Because I'd like to know you better." "You don't know anything about me." "I know you're honest. I know you don't perform for people. I know you'd rather be uncomfortable than fake." His gaze held hers. "That's more than I know about most people I've met in the last 10 years. Elena's mind was racing. This didn't make sense. Men who looked like Victor Castellano, who carried themselves like living weapons and made entire ballrooms go quiet. They didn't ask unemployed writers to dinner. There had to be an angle, a reason. "I can see you thinking," Victor said. "What are you trying to figure out?" "What you want from me." "Dinner. Conversation." He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Maybe I'm tired of people who are afraid to tell me the truth." "And you think I would?" "I think you already have, twice." Elena realized he was right. She'd been more honest with this stranger in 10 minutes than she'd been with anyone in months. Maybe because she had nothing to lose. Maybe because something about him demanded it. "Where?" she heard herself ask. "I'll pick you up, 7 o'clock. "You don't know where I live." Victor pulled out his phone, handed it to her. "Put your address in." She should have said no. Every instinct that had kept her alive and relatively functional for 28 years was screaming that this was a bad idea. But Elena took the phone and typed in her address anyway, fingers moving before her brain could catch up. He glanced at the screen when she handed it back, then nodded. "I'll see you tomorrow." "Wait, I don't have your number." "You don't need it. I'll be there." He started to walk away, then paused. "Keep the jacket. You look cold." Then he was gone, disappearing back into the ballroom like he'd never been there at all. Elena stood on the terrace for another 5 minutes, wrapped in a jacket that probably cost more than her rent, trying to process what had just happened. Her phone buzzed. "Mara, where are you?" "Terrace." Heading back. When she made it inside, Mara took one look at her and went still. "Whose jacket is that?" "I'll tell you later." "Elena, whose—" Mara's eyes went wide. "Is that Victor Castellano's jacket? You know him?" "Everyone knows him, or knows of him." Mara grabbed her arm, dragging her toward a quiet corner. "What the hell happened?" "He asked me to dinner." Mara's mouth fell open. "He what?" "Tomorrow night. He's picking me up at 7. "Elena." Mara's voice dropped to a whisper. "Do you know who he is?" "Some kind of investor. Some kind of Jesus Christ." Mara looked around to make sure no one was listening. "Victor Castellano runs the Castellano family, as in organized crime, as in the mob, as in people who cross him end up in the harbor." The words should have scared her. Instead, Elena just felt tired. "Of course he is. Because my life wasn't complicated enough." "You can't go." "Why not?" "Because he's dangerous. Because people like him don't ask people like us to dinner without a reason. Because what? I might actually have an interesting night for once?" Elena pulled the jacket tighter. "Mara, 2 months ago I lost everything. My job, my savings, my sense of purpose. I've spent 8 weeks sitting in our apartment applying to positions I'll never get and wondering if I should just give up and go back to Ohio. So yeah, maybe having dinner with a dangerous man is a bad idea, but at least it's something." Mara stared at her. "You're serious?" "I'm tired of playing it safe. Safe got me nowhere." "Safe kept you alive." "Barely." Elena met her friend's eyes. "One dinner. If it's awful, I'll never see him again." But even as she said it, Elena knew she was lying, because something had happened on that terrace. Something that felt like recognition, like Victor Castellano had looked at her and seen someone real, and she'd looked back and seen the same. Whatever tomorrow brought, it wouldn't be simple. And Elena was surprised to find she didn't care besem. The next morning arrived with panic. Elena stood in front of her closet, if you could call a tension rod with hangers a closet, and faced the truth. She owned nothing appropriate for dinner with a mob boss, assuming there was such a thing as appropriate attire for that situation. Her phone rang. Mara, don't back out. I wasn't going to, Elena said, pulling out a black dress and immediately putting it back. Too formal. Or not formal enough. She had no frame of reference. Yes, you were. I know you. You're standing in front of your clothes right now having an existential crisis. I'm not. Okay, yes, I am. Wear the blue wrap dress. The one you got for that wedding last year. Elena found it in the back, still in dry cleaner plastic. This feels like too much. You're having dinner with Victor Castellano. There's no such thing as too much. Mara paused. I still think this is insane. Noted. But if you're doing it anyway, at least look good. Helpful. Thank you. And Elena? Keep your phone on. Text me when you get there and when you leave. If I don't hear from you by midnight, I'm calling the police. The police probably work for him. Not funny. But it kind of was. Elena spent the day in a strange state of suspension. She tried to write, managed about 3 sentences, then deleted them all. She went for a run, came back more anxious than before. She took a shower, did her makeup, took it off, did it again. By 6:30, she was dressed and terrified. The blue dress fit well, better than she remembered. She'd lost weight in the last 2 months, stress eating less than not eating at all. Her hair cooperated for once, falling in dark waves past her shoulders. Simple jewelry, minimal makeup. She looked in the mirror and saw someone who might possibly not completely embarrass herself. At 6:55, her buzzer rang. Elena's stomach dropped. She grabbed her bag, checked her reflection one last time, and headed downstairs. The car waiting outside her building was not what she expected. No limousine, no obvious display of wealth, just a black Mercedes, sleek and understated, with a driver standing beside the rear door. Miss Ward? The driver was older, maybe 60, with kind eyes and a slight accent she couldn't place. Yes. I'm Marco. Mr. Castellano asked me to bring you to the restaurant. He's meeting me there? Yes, miss. He had some business to attend to first. Of course he did. Elena slid into the back seat, the leather cool against her legs. The interior smelled like expensive car and fresh coffee. As Marco pulled away from the curb, Elena caught a glimpse of Mara watching from their third-floor window. She pulled out her phone. In the car, still alive. We'll update. The drive took 20 minutes, winding through Boston's Back Bay toward the waterfront. Elena watched the city pass, trying to calm her racing heart. This was just dinner, just a conversation. She could handle conversation. They pulled up to a restaurant Elena had walked past 100 times but never entered. Il Castello. No sign, just a brass number on an unmarked door. The kind of place you didn't find unless you knew it was there. Marco opened her door. Mr. Castellano is waiting inside. Enjoy your evening, miss. The door opened before she could knock. A man in a suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent nodded to her. Miss Ward, this way, please. Inside was all dark wood and soft lighting. No other diners. The tables were empty, place settings pristine but unoccupied. Are we early? Elena asked. No, miss. Mr. Castellano reserved the restaurant for the evening. The whole restaurant? Yes, miss. Of course he did. Victor was standing when she entered the private dining room, and the sight of him made her breath catch. He'd traded the tuxedo for a dark suit, no tie, the top button of his shirt undone. It should have looked casual. On him, it looked dangerous. Elena. He moved toward her, and she caught that scent again. Dark, expensive, distracting. You look beautiful. Thank you. This place is, she gestured at the empty restaurant, a lot. I prefer privacy when I'm getting to know someone. He pulled out her chair. Wine? Please. He poured something red that probably cost more than her security deposit. Elena took a sip. It was perfect. She was starting to hate how perfect everything around him was. Are you uncomfortable? Victor asked, settling into his own chair. A little. Why? Because this feels like a performance. The empty restaurant, the wine, She stopped herself. The what? The whole thing. It feels like you're trying to impress me. Victor leaned back, studying her. And if I am? Then I don't understand why. Maybe I enjoy your company. You don't know me. I'd like to. He said it simply, without pretense. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone who would pretend not to be nervous, someone who would perform. His eyes held hers. But you just told me you're uncomfortable. That's not a performance. Maybe I'm bad at performing. Or maybe you're just honest. He lifted his glass. To honesty, then, however uncomfortable it makes us. Elena clinked her glass against his, feeling something shift in the air between them. To honesty. Dinner arrived, course after course of food that tasted like art. Elena tried to pace herself, but everything was so good she kept forgetting to be nervous. Victor asked questions, real questions, about her work, her writing, what she cared about. And he listened. Actually listened, not just waiting for his turn to talk. Why investigative journalism? He asked over the main course. Because people lie. Institutions lie. I wanted to tell the truth. And did you? Sometimes, when they let me. Elena set down her fork. Most of the time I got shut down. Too controversial, too risky, too likely to piss off advertisers. The last piece I worked on was about a real estate developer bribing city officials. My editor killed it. Why? The developer advertised with us, 6 figures a year. The bitterness was still fresh. 2 weeks later, the magazine folded anyway. All that compromise for nothing. Victor was quiet for a moment. What happened to the story? It's on my hard drive, along with everything else I couldn't publish. You should finish it. There's no point. No one's going to print it now. Then publish it yourself. Elena laughed. With what platform? What credibility? I'm nobody. You're someone who gives a damn about the truth. Victor's voice was firm. That's not nobody. Something in her chest tightened. When was the last time someone had believed in her work? In her? What about you? She asked, needing to shift the focus. You said you manage investments. What kind? The kind that require discretion. That's not an answer. No, he agreed. It's not. So you won't tell me. Would you believe me if I did? Elena considered that. Probably not. Then why ask? Because I'm a journalist. I ask questions, even when you know you won't get answers. Especially then. Victor smiled, a real smile this time, not just a movement of his mouth. It changed his whole face, made him look younger, almost vulnerable. You already know what I am, he said finally. Your friend told you last night. She said you run a crime family. And you came anyway. It wasn't a question, but Elena answered. Yes? Why? Now it was her turn to be honest. Because I'm tired of safe. Safe is boring. Safe is sitting in my apartment, sending out resumes that disappear into void. Safe is slowly giving up on everything I wanted to be. She met his eyes. Maybe having dinner with you is dangerous. But at least it's real. Victor was quiet for a long moment, his gaze intense. You have no idea how rare that is. Someone willing to see me as I am. And what are you? Complicated. He said it without apology. I didn't choose this life, Elena. I inherited it. My father built an empire, and when he died, it fell to me. By the time I was old enough to want something different, it was too late. This world doesn't let you leave. Do you want to leave? Sometimes. His honesty surprised her. But wanting something doesn't make it possible. So you just stay? Keep doing something you don't want to do? I do what I have to do to protect what's mine. My people, my family, the ones who depend on me. He leaned forward. This world isn't black and white, Elena. It's not good versus evil. It's about survival. About making impossible choices and living with the consequences. That sounds exhausting. It is. He said it quietly, and for the first time Elena saw past the armor. Saw the man underneath, tired, burdened, alone. Why me? She asked. You could have dinner with anyone. Why ask me? Victor was silent for a moment, considering. Because when I looked at you last night, you looked back. Not at the suit, not at the reputation, at me. And you weren't afraid, you weren't impressed. You were just you. He paused. That doesn't happen often. Maybe you're not as scary as you think. I'm scarier than you know. Maybe. Elena took a sip of wine, feeling bold. But you're also kind. You gave me your jacket when I was cold. You ask me real questions. You listen to my answers. That's not scary. That's human. Human. Victor repeated the word like he was testing it. I haven't been allowed to be human in a long time. Who doesn't allow it? This life, the people in it. When you run an organization like mine, showing humanity is a weakness. It gets people killed. That's bleak. That's reality. But his voice was sad, not hard. They finished dinner. Dessert came and went. Coffee arrived, rich and dark. Elena realized hours had passed and she didn't want to leave. Didn't want this strange, honest conversation to end. I should get you home, Victor said finally, though he didn't move. Yeah. Elena didn't move either. He stood, came around the table, pulled out her chair. His hand brushed her lower back as she stood, and she felt it everywhere. This close, she could see the flecks of gray in his dark eyes, the small scar above his left eyebrow. Thank you for dinner, she said. Thank you for coming. His hand was still on her back, warm through the thin fabric of her dress. I'd like to see you again. When? Soon. He guided her toward the exit where Marco was already waiting with the car. I'll call you. You still don't have my number. Victor smiled. Elena, I had your address within 10 minutes of you leaving the terrace last night. I have your number. She should have been disturbed by that. Instead, she just laughed. Of course you do. The drive home felt shorter than the drive there. Elena watched the city pass, her mind replaying every moment of the evening. When Marco pulled up to her building, Victor was in the back seat. She blinked. When did you set... I rode with you. He said it like it was obvious. I'm not letting you go home alone at night. I've been doing it for years. Not anymore. He stepped out, came around, opened her door himself. Not while you're with me. We had one dinner, and I'll want another, and another after that. He walked her to the building entrance. So get used to it. Elena turned to face him, her back against the door. He was close, too close, and she could feel the heat of him. This is crazy. Probably. I don't do things like this. Date dangerous men. Get swept up in whatever this is. Neither do I. Date, I mean. His voice was low. I don't have time. Don't have the luxury of letting someone in. So why now? I don't know. He said it like a confession. But I saw you, and something shifted. Like I'd been holding my breath for years and suddenly remembered how to exhale. Elena's heart was hammering. That's too much. I know. But you wanted honesty. I did. She looked up at him, this man who terrified an entire city, who ran an empire built on shadows and violence, who was looking at her like she was something precious. Call me. I will. He leaned down, and for a second Elena thought he might kiss her. But instead, he pressed his lips to her forehead, gentle, careful, almost reverent. Then he stepped back. Good night, Elena. She watched him get back in the car, watched Marco drive away, and then she stood there for 5 full minutes trying to remember how to breathe. Her phone buzzed. Mara, you've been gone for 4 hours. Are you alive? Elena typed back. Alive, come downstairs. I need to tell you everything. She did. She told Mara about the empty restaurant, the conversation, the way Victor looked at her like she mattered. She told her about his honesty, his loneliness, the moment at the door. You're falling for him, Mara said when she finished. I barely know him. Elena, you're falling for him. And the terrifying thing was, Mara might be right. 3 days passed. No call. Elena tried not to think about it. Tried to focus on job applications, on updating her portfolio, on anything except the fact that Victor Castellano had said he'd call and hadn't. Maybe he'd changed his mind. Maybe the dinner had been a whim, a moment of boredom. Maybe she'd imagined the whole connection. On the 4th day, her buzzer rang at 2 in the afternoon. Package for Elena Ward. She went downstairs. The delivery man handed her a box, plain, unmarked. She signed for it, carried it upstairs, set it on her kitchen counter. Inside was a laptop, top of the line, barely out of the box, and a note, written in strong, angular handwriting. For the stories you need to tell. V. Elena stared at it. At the laptop that probably cost $3,000. At the note that said he'd been listening, that he'd heard her when she talked about her work. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Did you get it? Victor's voice, warm and familiar. You can't just... This is too much. It's a tool. You need it. Victor, are you busy tomorrow night? Elena's protest died. No. Good. I'm picking you up at 6. Wear something you can move in. Where are we going? You'll see. He paused. And Elena, use the laptop. Finish that story about the developer. I know someone who will publish it. Then he hung up. Elena looked at the laptop, at the note, at her phone. She should give it back. Should tell him this was moving too fast, that she couldn't accept gifts like this. Instead, she opened the laptop and started to write. The article went live on a Wednesday morning. Elena had spent 2 weeks finishing it, poring over documents she'd collected before the magazine folded, tracking down sources who were still willing to talk. The developer's name was Richard Harmon, and his fingerprints were all over half the construction projects in Boston. City permits that appeared overnight. Zoning changes that defied explanation. Inspectors who looked the other way while buildings went up that shouldn't have passed code. Victor had been true to his word. He'd connected her with an independent investigative site that had enough credibility to matter, and enough independence to not care about advertising revenue. They'd fact-checked everything, lawyered every line, and published it under her byline. By noon, her inbox was exploding. Other journalists asking for interviews. Readers thanking her. And one email from Richard Harmon's legal team threatening a defamation lawsuit. Let them threaten, Victor said when she called him, panicked. They'd fallen into a rhythm over the past 2 weeks. Daily phone calls, 3 more dinners. One afternoon where he'd shown up at a coffee shop near her apartment and sat with her for 2 hours while she wrote, just reading a book in comfortable silence. Every fact in that piece is documented. They won't sue because they'd have to prove you wrong. They can't. You sound very sure. I had my own people verify your sources. Elena paused. You what? You think I'd let you publish something that would put you at risk? I had it checked. Everything you wrote is solid. She should have been angry about the invasion, the presumption. Instead, she felt something warm settle in her chest. You were protecting me. Always. He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Are you still free tonight? Yes? Where are we going this time? It's a surprise. Marco will pick you up at 6. She'd learned not to argue with surprises. Marco arrived exactly at 6, and this time the drive took them out of the city, into the suburbs, and then beyond, to a private airfield Elena didn't know existed. A helicopter sat waiting, its rotors already beginning to spin. You're joking, Elena said. Victor appeared from the hangar, dressed in dark jeans and a leather jacket that made him look less like a mob boss and more like someone who belonged in an action movie. You said you wanted real. This is real. This is excessive. That too. He helped her into the helicopter, his hand steady on her arm. Trust me. She did. That was the scary part. They flew north along the coastline, the sun setting over the Atlantic, painting everything gold and pink. Victor sat beside her, pointing out landmarks, his voice steady through the headset. He looked different out here, away from the city. Younger, lighter. Where are we going? Elena asked. Somewhere I go when I need to remember who I am. They landed on a private estate somewhere in Maine. She'd lost track of exactly where. The property sprawled across what must have been 100 acres, with a house that looked more like something from an architecture magazine than a place anyone actually lived. But Victor led her past it, down a path through the woods, until they emerged onto a rocky cliff overlooking the ocean. This was my mother's favorite spot, he said quietly. She died when I was 15. Cancer. By the time they caught it, there was nothing to do but wait. Elena's throat tightened. I'm sorry. She used to bring me here in the summers, before everything got complicated. Before my father... He trailed off, staring at the water. She wanted me to be a teacher. Did you know that? She had this whole vision of me in a classroom, shaping young minds, living a quiet life. That's not what happened. No, my father made sure of that. There was bitterness in his voice. He groomed me from the time I could walk, taught me the business, the rules, who to trust, and who to fear. By the time she died, I was already too deep in it, already making decisions no 15-year-old should have to make. What kind of decisions? Victor looked at her, and there was something raw in his expression. The kind that keep you up at night. The kind you can't take back. Elena moved closer, her shoulder brushing his. You can tell me. Whatever it is. Why would you want to know? Because you're carrying it alone, and maybe that's part of the problem. He was quiet for a long moment, the wind whipping around them, the ocean crashing below. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. There was a man, Paulo Silva. He worked for my father, managed the docks. When my father died, Paulo thought it was his chance to take over. He had supporters, people who thought I was too young, too soft. Victor's jaw tightened. He came for me. Not directly. He was smarter than that. He went after people I cared about. My father's old advisor, my uncle. He made it look like accidents, but I knew. What did you do? What I had to do. He turned to face her fully. I was 17, Elena. 17, and I had to make a choice. Let him keep killing people until he got to me, or stop him first. Did you kill him? I ordered it, which amounts to the same thing. He said it flatly, without emotion. One of my father's loyal men handled it, made it look like a drug deal gone wrong. After that, no one questioned my authority. No one challenged me. I'd proven I could be ruthless. Elena absorbed that, trying to reconcile the man in front of her with the image of a 17-year-old ordering an execution. Do you regret it? I regret that it was necessary, but I don't regret surviving. He looked at her, searching her face. Does that scare you? It should have. Every rational part of her brain said she should be terrified, should run, should put as much distance between herself and this man as possible. But all she felt was sadness. Sadness for the boy who'd been forced to become a killer. Sadness for the man who carried that weight every day. No, she said. It makes me sad. But it doesn't scare me. It should. Probably. But I'm not scared of you, Victor. I'm scared for you. Something shifted in his expression. Before she could process it, he pulled her close, his mouth finding hers. The kiss was nothing like she'd imagined, not practiced, not smooth. It was desperate and urgent and tasted like salt air and honesty. His hands cupped her face like she was something precious and breakable, and Elena felt herself falling into it, into him, into this impossible thing growing between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor pressed his forehead to hers. I don't know how to do this, he said. How to be with someone. How to let someone in. Neither do I, Elena admitted. But maybe we figure it out together. This life I have, it's dangerous. People will come after you just because you're with me. Then we deal with it. You say that now. I say it because I mean it. She pulled back enough to look him in the eyes. I'm not some delicate thing that needs protecting from reality. I spent my career digging into places I wasn't supposed to look. I know what danger looks like. Not like this, not the kind I bring. So teach me, show me your world. Let me decide if I can handle it. Victor studied her for a long moment, conflict clear in his expression. Then he nodded slowly. Okay, but not tonight. Tonight, let's just be two people watching the sunset. They stayed on the cliff until full dark, talking about everything and nothing. Victor told her about his mother, the stories she used to read him, the way she'd hum while she cooked. Elena told him about growing up in Ohio, about her father who taught high school English, and her mother who died in a car accident when Elena was 12. That's why you write, Victor said. It wasn't a question. She kept journals. Boxes of them. After she died, I read them all. It was like having her back, hearing her voice on the page. Elena's voice caught. I wanted to do that for other people. Tell the stories that mattered. Make people feel less alone. You do that. His hand found hers in the dark. That article you published. You gave voice to people who couldn't speak up themselves. That matters. Sometimes it feels like shouting into the void. Maybe, but someone's listening. They flew back to Boston near midnight. Victor walked her to her door, and this time when he kissed her goodnight, it was softer. A promise instead of a question. Tomorrow, he said, I'll show you what my world really looks like. Elena should have been nervous. Instead, she felt ready. The next evening, Victor picked her up himself, driving a black Range Rover that looked built to survive a war. Elena climbed in, noting the subtle differences from normal cars. Reinforced panels, tinted windows darker than legal, something that looked like a panic button on the dash. "Where are we going?" "To meet my family." He said it casually, but Elena caught the tension in his shoulders. "Your actual family or your work family?" "Both. They're the same thing." They drove to the north end, parking behind a restaurant called Lucia's. Not a tourist spot, the kind of place locals knew about, with checkered tablecloths and the smell of garlic and tomato sauce heavy in the air. Victor led her through the back entrance, up a narrow staircase to a private dining room. 6 men sat around a large table. They all stood when Victor entered, their movements synchronized. Respect, Elena realized, or fear. Maybe both. "Gentlemen," Victor said, "this is Elena Ward. She's with me." The statement landed like a bomb. Elena felt 6 pairs of eyes assess her, calculate her worth, judge her presence. "Elena, this is my inner circle," Victor gestured to each man in turn. "Michael Torino, my second. Anthony Ricci, security. James Costa, operations. Sal Benedetto, financial. Frank Marconi, legal. And you've met Marco." Marco, standing by the door, gave her a slight nod and what might have been the ghost of a smile. "Gentlemen," Elena said, keeping her voice steady despite her hammering heart. Michael spoke first. He was maybe 40, with sharp eyes and a scar running along his jawline. "With all respect, boss, is this wise? Bringing an outsider into—" "Elena isn't an outsider," Victor interrupted. "She's family now. Treat her accordingly." The silence that followed was loaded. Elena could practically hear them recalculating, adjusting to this new reality. "Sit," Victor said, pulling out a chair for her. "We have business to discuss." Elena should understand what that means. The next hour was an education. They talked about territories, shipments, payments owed, and debts collected. They used coded language for some of it, but Elena was a journalist. She could read between the lines. This was the machinery of organized crime laid bare, money laundering through legitimate businesses, protection rackets disguised as security services, shipments that definitely weren't legal goods moving through the port. And through it all, Victor ran it like a corporation. He asked questions, demanded numbers, made decisions that balanced profit against risk. He was fair. She noticed that immediately. When Anthony reported a business owner who couldn't make his payment because his daughter was sick, Victor didn't threaten. He extended the deadline and arranged for a doctor. "We're not thugs," he said when Elena commented on it later. "We're businessmen. Fear gets compliance. Loyalty gets commitment. I prefer loyalty." "That's not how most people imagine the mob. Most people watch too many movies." Victor poured her wine. They'd stayed after the others left, just the 2 of them in the private room. "Yes, there's violence. Yes, we do things that aren't legal, but we also employ thousands of people. We provide services the government can't or won't. We take care of our communities." "That's a nice way of saying you profit from other people's desperation. Would you prefer I pretend otherwise?" His eyes were sharp. "You wanted honesty. Here it is. I run an empire built on things society claims to condemn but secretly needs. Gambling, protection, goods that move through unofficial channels. I didn't create the demand. I just supply it. That's a rationalization. Maybe. Or maybe it's reality." He leaned back. "You think the legitimate businesses in this city are clean? The developers like Richard Harmon who bribe their way into contracts? The politicians who take money from corporations and vote however they're told? At least I'm honest about what I am." Elena couldn't argue with that. She'd spent years documenting the corruption of supposedly legitimate institutions. "So what does that make me? Dating someone who runs criminal enterprises? Complicated." Victor's mouth quirked. "But you knew that already." A knock on the door interrupted them. Anthony stepped in, his expression grim. "Boss, we have a problem." Victor's demeanor changed instantly. Gone was the man who'd been debating ethics. In his place was someone cold and calculating. "What kind of problem?" "Dmitry Volkov. He hit one of our warehouses on the docks, took out 3 of our guys and made off with a shipment." Elena felt Victor go still beside her. "Casualties?" 2 in the hospital, 1 dead. Tony Marchetti. Victor's jaw clenched. Tony had a wife, 2 kids. "I know, boss." "Make sure they're taken care of. Full benefits, college fund for the kids, house paid off." He stood. Where's Dimitri now? We're tracking him. He's holed up in one of his clubs in Dorchester. Good. Victor turned to Elena, and she saw something in his eyes that made her stomach tighten. Rage, carefully controlled but burning underneath. I need to handle this. Marco will take you home. I want to stay. Elena, you said you'd show me your world. This is part of it. She stood, meeting his gaze. I'm not running. Victor looked at her for a long moment, then at Anthony. She stays, but she stays back. Understood? Boss, if they're shooting, there won't be. This is going to be a conversation. The way he said conversation made it sound like a threat. 20 minutes later, Elena found herself in the back of the Range Rover with Victor, Anthony driving, 2 more cars following behind them. Victor had made phone calls, his voice clipped and commanding, assembling resources with frightening efficiency. What's going to happen? Elena asked. Dmitry Volkov runs the Russian operations in Boston. We have an understanding. He stays on his side, I stay on mine. He just broke that understanding. Victor checked his phone. Now I'm going to remind him why that was a mistake. You're going to kill him. No. Victor looked at her. I'm going to make him wish I had. They pulled up outside a nightclub called Red Square. Gaudy neon, bass thumping loud enough to feel in her chest, a line of people waiting to get in. Anthony and 6 other men got out first, and Elena watched them disappear inside. 30 seconds later, the music cut off. People started streaming out, confused and annoyed. Stay in the car, Victor said, no matter what you hear. He left before she could argue, Marco sliding into the driver's seat. Don't worry, miss. He's done this before. That's not reassuring. It should be. Mr. Castellano, he doesn't lose. Through the tinted windows, Elena watched Victor walk into the club like he owned it, which she realized maybe he did. She checked her phone. 10 minutes passed. 15. She was starting to think about ignoring Victor's order when he emerged, followed by Anthony and the others. Victor looked calm, unhurt, but there was blood on his knuckles. He got back in the car and Marco drove without being told. What happened? Elena asked. Dmitri and I came to an understanding. He'll return what he took, compensate Tony's family, and stay on his side of the line. Victor pulled out a handkerchief, wiping the blood from his hands. If he doesn't, next time will be different. You hit him. Once. He'll heal. Victor. He killed one of my people, Elena. A man with a family. You think I should have talked it out over coffee? There was steel in his voice. This is the world I live in. This is what I meant when I said it's dangerous. Elena took the handkerchief from him, gently cleaning the blood from his knuckles. His hands were shaking slightly. Adrenaline, she realized. For all his control, he was human underneath. I'm not judging you, she said quietly. I'm trying to understand. Understanding and accepting are different things. I know. She finished cleaning his hands, then held one of them in both of hers. But I'm still here. Victor looked at her, and something in his expression cracked. Why? Why stay after seeing that? Because you paid for Tony's kids to go to college. Because you extended a deadline for a man whose daughter was sick. Because underneath all this, she gestured at the car, the violence they were driving away from, you're still the man who gave me his jacket when I was cold. Those things don't cancel each other out. No, they make you complicated, but I'm starting to think complicated is better than simple. Victor pulled her close, his face buried in her hair. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. They went back to Victor's place that night, a penthouse in the seaport with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. It was gorgeous and cold, all modern lines and expensive furniture that looked like no one had ever actually sat on it. This doesn't look like you, Elena said, walking through the living room. It's not. My father designed it. I just never changed it. Victor poured them both whiskey. Neat. I don't spend much time here anyway. Where do you spend time? Working, moving. I have apartments scattered around the city, safe houses outside it. Staying in one place too long is dangerous. That sounds lonely. It is. He handed her the glass. Until now. They sat on the couch, expensive leather that was somehow still uncomfortable, and talked until 3 a.m. Victor told her about the business, the complexity of managing an organization where trust was currency and betrayal was constant. Elena told him about her fears, about feeling like she'd wasted her 20s chasing a career that led nowhere, about wondering if the article she'd just published would be her only real contribution to journalism. "Write another one," Victor said, "and another after that. You have a voice. Use it." "Easy for you to say. You have power." "I have power because I took it. No one gave it to me." He turned to face her. "You think I wanted this life? I wanted to teach literature. I wanted to read books and debate ideas and live quietly. But that wasn't an option. So I took the hand I was dealt and played it as well as I could. And now? Now I have you, and that feels like the first real choice I've made in 20 years. Elena kissed him. Not desperate this time, but deliberate. A choice, just like he'd said. Victor responded slowly, carefully, like he was afraid of breaking her. His hands tangled in her hair, and she could feel his heart racing against her palm. "Stay," he said when they broke apart. "Tonight, just stay." She did. They didn't sleep much. Spent hours talking, kissing, mapping the scars of each other's lives. Victor had physical ones, a knife wound on his shoulder, a bullet graze on his ribs. Elena's were internal, but just as real. They traded stories like currency, building something between them that felt solid despite how impossible it should have been. When Elena finally fell asleep, it was with Victor's arm around her, his breathing steady against her neck, and the feeling that she'd finally found somewhere she belonged. She woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee. Victor stood in the kitchen, barefoot in dress pants and an undershirt, looking more human than she'd ever seen him. "Morning," he said, handing her a cup. "Sleep okay?" "Better than I have in months." Elena took the coffee, perfectly made. Of course it was. "What time is it?" 8. "I have a meeting at 10, but I wanted to make you breakfast first." "You cook?" "Poorly, but I make decent eggs." He did. They ate at the kitchen island, comfortable silence between them, and Elena thought about how strange this was. How normal it felt to be having breakfast with a man who'd beaten someone bloody 12 hours ago. How right it felt, despite everything. "I want you to meet someone," Victor said, breaking the silence. "If you're willing." "Who?" "My sister, Sophia. She's the only family I have left." He looked uncomfortable. "She's protective. She'll have questions. About me. About whether you're real or just another person trying to use me." Elena set down her fork. "And what do you think?" "I think you're the most real thing in my life right now." He said it simply, without drama. "But Sophia will need to see that for herself." "Okay, when?" "Tomorrow, lunch. She's flying in from New York." "Does she know about your work?" "She's my accountant. She knows everything." Victor smiled slightly. "Sophia's the smart one in the family. Got out, built her own life. She only comes back when I need her expertise." The next day, Elena met Sofia Castellano in a cafe in Cambridge. She was younger than Victor by maybe 5 years, with the same dark eyes but a softer face. She dressed like someone who belonged in a boardroom, all sharp lines and expensive taste. "So you're the writer," Sophia said, skipping pleasantries. "The one my brother can't stop talking about." "He talks about me?" "Constantly. It's annoying." But Sophia's eyes weren't hostile, just assessing. "What are your intentions?" "With Victor?" "No, with the Boston Red Sox." "Yes, with Victor." Elena almost laughed. "I like him. I know what he does. I'm choosing to stay anyway." "Why?" "Because he's honest with me. Because he sees me as a person, not a tool or an asset. Because underneath everything, he's just a man trying to do the best he can with an impossible situation." Elena met Sophia's gaze. "And because I'm tired of living a safe, small life." Sophia studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, I believe you." "Just like that?" "Victor's judgment is usually good. And you published that piece about the developer. I read it. It was good work." Sophia took a sip of her coffee. "But I need you to understand something. My brother, he acts tough. He runs an empire, makes hard decisions, all of that. But inside, he's still the kid who cried when our mother died, who wanted to be a teacher, who carries the weight of every decision he's ever had to make." "I know. Do you? Because people see the power and they think that's all there is. They don't see the cost." Sophia's voice was firm. "Loving Victor means accepting that cost. It means living with danger. It means never being completely safe. It means watching him make choices that will haunt him. Can you do that? Elena thought about it, really thought about it. I don't know, but I want to try. That's honest, at least. Sophia's expression softened slightly. He deserves someone who'll try. Just don't hurt him, because if you do, accountant or not, I'll make your life very difficult. Noted. They spent the rest of lunch talking about safer topics. Sophia's work, Elena's writing, their shared love of true crime podcasts. By the end, Elena felt like maybe she'd passed some kind of test. When Victor picked her up afterward, he looked nervous. Well, she threatened me. I think that means she likes me. Victor laughed, a real laugh that made him look young. That sounds like Sophia. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm. Elena wrote during the day, publishing pieces on the independent site that grew her reputation slowly but surely. Victor worked, running his empire with the same careful precision she'd seen that first night. And in between, they built something together. He took her to the opera. She dragged him to a poetry reading in a bookstore basement. They argued about books and politics, and whether pineapple belonged on pizza. They fell asleep watching movies neither of them cared about, just wanting the excuse to be close. But underneath the normal moments, danger simmered. Elena noticed the security that followed them everywhere. Noticed how Victor always positioned himself between her and potential threats. Noticed the tension in his shoulders that never quite went away. When does it get easier? She asked one night, lying in his bed. It doesn't. You just get better at managing it. That's bleak. That's honest. He pulled her closer. But having you here makes it bearable. Elena was starting to understand what Sophia had meant. Loving Victor meant accepting that there would never be complete peace. But maybe peace was overrated anyway. The first real crack came on a Tuesday. Elena was at Victor's penthouse, working on a piece about housing discrimination, when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Elena Ward? A man's voice, smooth and unfamiliar. Who's asking? A friend. Someone who thinks you should know what kind of man you're sleeping with. Her blood went cold. I know exactly who Victor is. Do you? Do you know about the Brennan family? What happened to them 3 years ago? I don't know what you're talking about. Ask him. Ask Victor about Patrick Brennan and his wife and their daughter. Ask him why they disappeared. The line went dead. Elena sat there, phone in hand, heart racing. She could ignore it, probably should ignore it. It was clearly someone trying to manipulate her, to drive a wedge between her and Victor. But she was a journalist, and journalists asked questions. Victor came home an hour later looking tired. There'd been some issue with a shipment, something that had kept him out late dealing with customs officials who needed their palms greased. He kissed her hello, started loosening his tie, and Elena knew she couldn't let it go. Who's Patrick Brennan? Victor froze. His expression went carefully blank. Where did you hear that name? Someone called me. Told me to ask you about him and his family. Said they disappeared 3 years ago. Who called you? I don't know. They didn't leave a name. Elena stood, crossing her arms. Victor, what happened to them? He was quiet for a long moment, and she watched him decide how much to tell her. The calculation in his eyes made her stomach turn. Patrick Brennan worked for me, Victor said finally. He managed one of our operations in Southie. Good at his job, reliable. Until he wasn't. What does that mean? It means he got greedy, started skimming off the top, thought I wouldn't notice. When I confronted him, he threatened to go to the FBI, turn over records, testimony, everything. Victor poured himself a drink, his movements controlled but tense. I couldn't let that happen. So you killed him. I made him disappear. Him, his wife, his daughter. New identities, new city, enough money to start over, on the condition that they never come back, never contact anyone from their old life. Elena felt her knees go weak. You relocated them. I protected my organization, and I kept them alive when others wanted them dead. Victor turned to face her. Michael pushed for a different solution, permanent. I overruled him. The Brennans are alive and well in Arizona, running a small bookstore, living quiet lives. That was mercy, Elena. Mercy would have been letting them go without uprooting their entire existence. Mercy would have gotten them killed and destroyed everything I've built. His voice hardened. Patrick knew too much. Letting him walk away free wasn't an option, so I gave him the best option I could, life, in exchange for silence. And their daughter? She had to leave everything too? Her friends, her school, her whole life? Yes. Victor said it without flinching. I'm not proud of it, but I'd make the same choice again. Elena sank onto the couch, trying to process. This was different from the abstract knowledge of what Victor did. This was concrete. A family torn from their life because of his decisions. Why did someone call to tell me this? Because someone wants to drive a wedge between us. Someone who knows that making you question me is more effective than any direct attack. Victor set down his glass. This is what I warned you about. My enemies will use you to get to me. They'll dig up every hard decision I've ever made and present it in the worst possible light. Was there a better light? You made a child disappear, Victor. I kept her alive. His control cracked, voice rising. You want to judge me for that? Fine, but understand what the alternative was. Michael wanted all three of them at the bottom of the harbor. Dmitry Volkov wanted to make an example of them, torture Patrick in front of his family before killing them all. I was the only one arguing for mercy. That's not mercy. That's just being less monstrous than everyone else. Welcome to my world. Victor's hands were shaking. This is what I meant when I said it's complicated. Every choice I make, someone suffers. The only question is how much and who. I try to minimize the damage, but I can't eliminate it. That's not possible in this life. Elena stood, needing distance. She walked to the windows, staring out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, the Brennans were living under different names, always looking over their shoulders. A girl who'd been, 12, 13, had lost her identity because her father made a mistake, and Victor had decided their fate. I need time, she said quietly, to think about this. Elena, please just give me space. She felt him behind her, not touching, but close enough that she could feel his presence. If you walk away, I'll understand. But know that I never lied to you. I told you what I was from the start. You told me you were complicated. You didn't tell me you played with people's lives like chess pieces, because that would have sent you running before you knew me well enough to understand why. His voice was raw. I'm not asking you to approve of my choices. I'm asking you to see that I'm doing the best I can with impossible options. Elena turned to face him. That girl, the Brennan's daughter, what was her name? Sarah. Does she hate you? I don't know. I've never contacted them. That was part of the deal. Victor's expression was bleak. But if she does, she has every right to. And you just live with that? I live with a lot of things. He said it quietly. One more ghost doesn't make much difference. Elena left that night, went back to her own apartment. Mara took one look at her face and pulled her into a hug. What happened? Elena told her everything. The phone call, the Brennan family, Victor's defense of his actions. Mara listened without interrupting, and when Elena finished, she was quiet for a long moment. So what are you going to do? Mara asked finally. I don't know. Part of me thinks I should run as fast as I can, but another part... Elena's voice caught. Another part understands why he did it, and that terrifies me. Understanding doesn't mean accepting. No, but it makes it harder to judge. Elena pulled her knees to her chest. He's not a monster, Mara. He's just a man who's been forced to make monstrous choices. And I don't know if that's better or worse. What does your gut tell you? Elena thought about it. About Victor's honesty. His willingness to show her the worst parts of his world. About the way he'd looked when he talked about Sarah Brennan. Not defensive, just sad and resigned. About the fact that he could have lied, could have painted himself in a better light, but had chosen truth instead. My gut says he's worth the risk, she admitted. But my brain says I'm being naive. Your brain said becoming a journalist was impractical. Your gut said to do it anyway. Mara squeezed her hand. Sometimes your gut knows things your brain can't calculate. 3 days passed. Elena threw herself into work, finishing the housing piece and starting another about wage theft in the restaurant industry. Her phone rang multiple times, Victor calling, but she couldn't bring herself to answer. She needed clarity first, and talking to him would only muddy the waters. On the 4th day, Sophia showed up at her door. We need to talk, Victor's sister said, pushing past Elena into the apartment. Does Victor know you're here? No, he's been a wreck since you left, which is why I'm here. Sophia turned to face her, arms crossed. What's going on? Elena explained the phone call, the Brennan situation, her confusion about how to process it all. Sophia listened, her expression giving nothing away. Let me tell you something about my brother, Sophia said when Elena finished. When our father died, Victor was 22. The organization was in chaos, enemies circling, everyone waiting to see if he'd survive his first year. Know what his first major decision was? Elena shook her head. There was a guy, Tommy Rizzo, who'd been with our father for 20 years. Loyal, hardworking, the kind of guy everyone loved. But Tommy had a gambling problem. Got himself into debt with the wrong people. They came to Victor, said either Tommy pays or they'd make an example of him. What did Victor do? He paid Tommy's debts. $200,000. Then he sat Tommy down and told him he had two choices. Get help for the gambling or get out. Tommy chose help. He's been clean for 15 years now, runs one of our most profitable operations in Rhode Island. Sophia moved to the window, her profile sharp in the afternoon light. That same week, another guy, Frankie DeLuca, got caught stealing from us. Not much, a few thousand, but it was the principle. Everyone expected Victor to make an example of him, show he wasn't soft. You know what he did instead? What? Found out Frankie's mother needed cancer treatment they couldn't afford. Victor paid for it. Then he had Frankie work off the debt he owed with interest. Took him 2 years, but Frankie did it. Now he's one of Victor's most loyal people. Sophia turned back to Elena. My brother makes hard choices every day. Some of them are ugly. The Brennan thing, that was ugly, but he chose the least ugly option available. That's what you need to understand. Victor's not choosing between good and evil. He's choosing between different shades of necessary evil, and he lives with the weight of every single choice. How does he do it? Carry all that? Badly. He doesn't sleep well, drinks more than he should, carries guilt that would crush most people. Sophia's voice softened. Until you. You're the first person I've seen make him actually happy in years, the first person he's let see him as something other than the boss. I don't know if I can handle this life. Then don't. Walk away. But don't walk away because of who you think Victor should be. Walk away because of who he actually is. Make the decision based on reality, not on some fantasy of redemption or change. Elena looked at her. You really love him. He's my brother. He raised me after our mother died, protected me from our father's worst impulses, made sure I got out and built my own life. I owe him everything. Sophia's eyes were fierce. So yeah, I love him, and I'll defend him against anyone who hurts him, even you. After Sophia left, Elena sat in her apartment for hours, thinking. She could walk away. Probably should walk away. This life Victor led, it would never be clean or simple. There would always be more Sarah Brennans, more impossible choices, more nights wondering if the man she loved was becoming something she couldn't recognize. But there would also be Victor himself, his honesty, his attempts to be better than the world demanded, his capacity for love hidden under layers of survival instinct and necessity. She picked up her phone. Elena. Victor's voice was rough, like he hadn't slept. I'm coming over. We need to talk. 30 minutes later, she stood in his penthouse again. Victor looked worse than she'd ever seen him, exhausted, hollowed out, like the last 3 days had aged him years. I understand if you're done, he said before she could speak. I won't fight it. You deserve better than this. Stop. Elena crossed to him, took his hands in hers. I'm not done. I'm angry and confused and scared, but I'm not done. Why not? Because I asked around, did some digging. She'd called in favors, talked to sources, done what journalists do. Patrick Brennan wasn't just skimming money. He was working with a rival organization, passing them information about your operations. The FBI thing was leverage, but the real threat was that he'd gotten a dozen of your people killed through his information sharing. Victor's expression didn't change. I didn't tell you that because it sounds like justification. It's not justification, it's context. Elena squeezed his hands. I also found out that you set up a trust fund for Sarah Brennan. Full ride to any college she wants, no strings attached. And you've been monitoring the family from a distance, making sure they're safe, that no one from your world or Patrick's old associates ever finds them. How did you... I'm an investigative journalist, Victor. It's what I do. She searched his face. Why didn't you tell me about the trust fund? Because it doesn't absolve what I did. That girl still lost her life because of me. No, she lost the life she had because of her father's choices. You gave her a different one. Not the same. Not what she would have chosen, but alive, and with options. Elena stepped closer. I'm not saying what you did was right. I'm saying I understand why you did it. And I understand that you tried to make it as right as you could. Victor pulled her against him, his face buried in her hair. She felt him shaking. I thought I'd lost you. You almost did. I almost let fear win. She pulled back enough to look at him. But here's what I realized. I've spent my whole life playing it safe. Safe career choices, safe relationships, safe everything. And where did it get me? Unemployed and alone. You're the first real thing I've chosen in years. So yeah, you're dangerous and complicated and you make choices I don't always understand. But you're real. And I'd rather have real and messy than safe and empty. Real and messy might get you killed. Then we make sure it doesn't. She kissed him, tasting salt. His tears, or hers, she couldn't tell. I'm in this, Victor. All the way in. But I need you to promise me something. Anything. No more secrets. I don't care how ugly the truth is. You tell me. Let me decide if I can handle it. I promise. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her mouth. I promise complete honesty, even when it's hard. They spent that night talking through everything. The decisions Victor had made, the ones he regretted, the ones he'd make again. Elena shared her fears about losing herself in his world, about compromising her values. They didn't solve everything. Some problems didn't have solutions. But they built understanding, created a foundation of honesty that felt solid even if everything around it was chaos. 2 weeks later, the foundation cracked. Elena was meeting a source at a cafe in Cambridge, a city councilor willing to talk about kickbacks from a development project. She'd been there 20 minutes when the window exploded inward, glass showering everywhere, and people started screaming. Someone grabbed her arm, yanking her down behind the counter. She looked up into Anthony's face. Stay down, he ordered, his gun already drawn. What's happening? Someone just took a shot at you. We need to move. Now. Everything happened in blurred fast forward after that. Anthony and 2 other men she didn't recognize surrounded her, hustling her out the back of the cafe into a waiting car. They were moving before the door even closed, tires squealing. Whew, we don't know yet, but someone just tried to kill you. Anthony was on his phone, speaking rapid-fire Italian. Boss is meeting us at the safe house. Elena's hands were shaking. She looked down and saw blood on her sleeve, from the glass, a shallow cut she hadn't even felt happen. This was real. Someone had just shot at her. The safe house was a nondescript apartment in Somerville. Victor was already there when they arrived, and the look on his face when he saw the blood on her sleeve made her heart stop. Pure rage, barely controlled. Are you hurt? His hands were on her, checking for injuries with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with the fury in his eyes. Just glass cuts. I'm okay. You're not okay. Someone just tried to kill you. He pulled her against him, and she felt the tremor running through his body. Fear. Victor was afraid. Boss, Anthony said, we got the shooter. He's being transported now. Good. I want to talk to him. Victor's voice was ice. Elena, you're staying here. There's security, food, everything you need. Where are you going? To find out who ordered this. He kissed her hard, desperate. I'll be back. I promise. He left before she could argue. Elena spent the next 3 hours in the safe house with 2 guards who looked like they could bench press cars, trying not to think about what Victor was doing, trying not to imagine him interrogating whoever had shot at her. Her phone rang. Sophia. Are you okay? Victor called me. I'm fine. Scared, but fine. He's going to kill whoever did this. You know that, right? Elena did know. And the worst part was, she didn't feel bad about it. Someone had tried to murder her, and Victor was handling it the only way his world allowed. Sophia, what am I doing? This is insane. People are shooting at me. This is the life. I warned you. But Sophia's voice was kind. You can still walk away. Victor would hate it, but he'd let you go if it kept you safe. I don't want to walk away. I just want to understand why someone wants me dead. Because you matter to Victor, and that makes you a target. Sophia paused. Welcome to the family, Elena. It's terrifying and dangerous, and you'll spend half your life scared, but you'll never be alone. We protect our own. Victor came back 4 hours later, blood on his shirt that definitely wasn't his. Elena looked up from the couch where she'd been pretending to read. Is he dead? No, but he told me what I needed to know. Victor's face was grim. It was Sal. Elena's stomach dropped. Sal Benedetto, Victor's financial officer, one of the men at that first dinner. Your own guy? He's been working with a family in New York, feeding them information, undermining my operations. They promised him my territory when I was gone. Victor sank onto the couch beside her, suddenly looking exhausted. He ordered the hit on you to distract me, make me vulnerable. What are you going to do? I've already done it. Sal's gone, his assets seized, his family warned that if they try to retaliate, I'll finish what I started. Gone as in dead, or gone as in relocated? Victor looked at her, and she saw the truth in his eyes before he spoke. Dead. He tried to kill you, Elena. That's not something I relocate. She should have been horrified, should have felt something other than grim acceptance. But all she felt was tired. Tired of violence, tired of danger, tired of this world that kept trying to devour them both. I can't keep doing this, she said quietly. Victor went still. What are you saying? I'm saying we need to change something, because I can't live looking over my shoulder every day, waiting for the next person who wants to hurt you through me. Elena took his blood-stained hand in hers. You said this life doesn't let you leave. But what if we redefine the life? What if there was a way to keep you safe, keep your people protected, but minimize the danger? How? The organization doesn't shrink. It grows or it dies. Then grow it differently. Legitimize more of it. Use your power to build legal businesses. Move money into clean investments. She turned to face him fully. You're brilliant, Victor. You've built an empire from impossible circumstances. Imagine what you could do if you weren't spending all your energy on violence and territory wars. You're talking about going straight. I'm talking about evolution. You don't have to abandon your people or your power, just redirect it. Elena squeezed his hand. How many of your operations could be legitimate with the right paperwork? How many of your people have skills that could transfer to legal work? Victor was quiet, considering. It would take years, maybe decades, and it wouldn't eliminate all the danger, but it would reduce it, and it would give you something you've never had, a real choice about your future. And you'd stay? Through all of that? I'd stay, but not as someone you hide away in safe houses, as your partner. Equal footing, equal information, equal decisions. She met his eyes. I won't be a weakness someone can exploit. I'll be a strength, but only if you let me. Victor pulled her into his lap, his arms tight around her. You're already my strength. You just don't know it yet. Then prove it. Let me in completely. No more protecting me from the ugly parts. Show me everything and trust that I can handle it. What if you can't? Then we'll deal with it together. She kissed him softly, but I think I'm stronger than either of us gives me credit for. The next morning, Victor called a meeting. All his top people gathered in the back room at Lucia's. Elena sat beside him, and she felt the shock ripple through the group when they realized she was staying. Things are changing, Victor announced. The hit on Elena made something clear. We have vulnerabilities, internal and external, so we're going to address them. He laid out his vision. Slow transition toward legitimate businesses, maintaining core operations but finding legal frameworks for as much as possible. Tighter security. No more internal challenges to his authority. Anyone who had a problem could leave with their life, but they couldn't stay and undermine him. And Elena? Michael asked. Where does she fit in this? With me. She's family now. Anyone who touches her answers to me directly. Victor's voice left no room for argument. She's also going to help us with something we've never had. Public relations. Elena spoke up for the first time. People fear you because they don't understand you. They think you're monsters. But you employ thousands of people. You keep neighborhoods safe. You provide services the government won't. We're going to change the narrative. How? James asked, skeptical. Community investment, public works, anonymous donations that make real differences in people's lives. Elena had spent the last few hours working this out with Victor. You want legitimacy? Start acting legitimate. Start being seen as pillars of the community instead of shadows lurking in it. The resistance was palpable, but no one directly challenged her. Victor's backing was clear, and that made all the difference. The meeting broke up an hour later, and Anthony pulled Victor aside while Elena waited. You trust her with this? She heard Anthony ask. More than I trust anyone except you, Victor replied. She sees possibilities I don't. And she's right. We need to evolve or we'll die. Your father would have. My father's dead, I'm not. Victor's voice was firm. This is my organization now. We do this my way. Over the next month, things shifted. Victor started divesting from his most violent operations, transitioning people into businesses that could operate in daylight. Construction companies, restaurants, import-export that actually dealt in legal goods. The criminal elements didn't disappear. They couldn't, not without leaving power vacuums. But they got smaller, quieter. Elena published a piece about anonymous donations funding a youth center in Southie. Another about a mysterious benefactor paying for a new playground in Dorchester. She never named Victor, but people started connecting dots, started seeing the Castellano name as something other than a threat. It was working, slowly, incrementally, but working. Then everything fell apart. It started with a phone call at 3 a.m. Elena woke to Victor already sitting up, phone pressed to his ear, his body rigid. She knew that posture. Something bad had happened. When? His voice was clipped, controlled in a way that meant he was anything but. How many? A pause. I'm on my way. He was out of bed before the call ended, pulling on clothes with military efficiency. What's wrong? Elena asked, her heart already racing. The warehouse in Charlestown. Someone hit it. Explosives. Victor's face was carved from stone. 4 of my people are dead. 6 more in the hospital. Elena felt the air leave her lungs. Who? I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. He strapped on a shoulder holster, checked his weapon. The casual violence of it should have shocked her. It didn't anymore. Stay here. Marco's outside. Don't open the door for anyone but me. Victor. He kissed her hard, desperate. I love you. I need you to know that. Whatever happens today, I love you. Then he was gone, and Elena was left in the dark penthouse, wondering if that had been goodbye. She didn't go back to sleep. Sat on the couch, watching the news, waiting for reports of the explosion. It made the morning broadcast. Industrial accident in Charlestown, multiple casualties, investigation ongoing. No mention of organized crime or the Castellano family. Victor's people had already managed the narrative. Mara called at 7. I just saw the news. Please tell me you're nowhere near that. I'm safe. Victor's handling it. Elena, this is getting out of control. People are dying. I know. And she did know, could feel it pressing down on her, the weight of loving someone whose world was built on violence. But I can't walk away now. Not when he needs me. What about what you need? What about your safety? Elena didn't have a good answer for that. Victor didn't come home that day, or the next. Elena got brief text messages, alive, working on it, love you, but nothing substantial. She tried to write, but couldn't focus. Tried to sleep, but kept jolting awake from nightmares of explosions and blood. On the 3rd day, Sophia showed up. You look terrible, she said bluntly, pushing past Elena into the apartment. Thanks. Very helpful. When did you last eat something that wasn't coffee? Sophia headed for the kitchen, started pulling out ingredients. Victor called me, said you've been alone too long. He's busy trying to figure out who killed 4 people. And you're busy falling apart. Sophia cracked eggs into a pan with more force than necessary. That doesn't help anyone. What am I supposed to do? Pretend everything's fine? Go about my day like people aren't dying because of Victor's world? No. You're supposed to be strong enough to handle the reality you chose. Sophia turned to face her. You knew what this was. You said you could handle it, so handle it. That's easy for you to say. You got out. Got out? Sophia laughed, bitter. Elena, I'm his accountant. I'm up to my neck in this. The only difference is I don't live with him, don't sleep beside him, don't have to see the cost written on his face every night. You think getting out means I'm safe? I'm a Castellano. I'll never be safe. Elena sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. How do you do it? Live with the fear? I don't live with it. I make peace with it. Sophia plated the eggs, set them in front of Elena. Eat. Then I'm going to tell you something Victor would kill me for sharing. Elena ate because arguing took energy she didn't have. The eggs were good. Sophia had added cheese and herbs, made them taste like something other than obligation. When Victor was 25, Sophia said, settling across from her, someone went after him. Professional hit, planned for months. They caught him outside a restaurant in the North End, shot him 3 times, chest, shoulder, gut. Elena's fork clattered to the plate. He never told me that, because he barely survived. Spent 2 weeks in a coma, another month in the hospital. The doctors said if he'd been anyone else, he'd be dead. Sophia's eyes were distant, remembering. I sat beside his bed every day, watching him fight for every breath. And I realized something. Victor's not afraid of dying. He's afraid of failing the people who depend on him. That's what drives him. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand what you're dealing with. Victor will sacrifice anything, including himself, to protect what's his. And you're his now. That explosion, someone's declaring war, and Victor will burn the world down before he lets them hurt you again. Again? The cafe shooting was a warning. This is the real attack. Sophia leaned forward. So you need to decide right now if you're strong enough to stand beside him through what's coming, because it's going to get worse before it gets better. Elena met her gaze. I'm not leaving him. Good. Because he needs you more than he'll ever admit. Sophia stood. Now get dressed. We're going to see him. I thought he said to stay. He says a lot of things. Doesn't mean we listen. They drove to a building Elena had never seen before. Industrial and anonymous, in a part of the city she didn't recognize. Sophia had credentials that got them past security, up an elevator, down a hallway that smelled like concrete and old cigarettes. Victor was in a room that looked like something from a crime drama. Concrete walls, folding table, 3 men standing around looking grim. He turned when they entered, and Elena saw exhaustion etched into every line of his face. Sophia, what are you... He stopped when he saw Elena. You shouldn't be here. And you shouldn't be running yourself into the ground, Sophia shot back. When did you last sleep? I'm fine. You're not fine. You look like death. Sophia turned to the other men. Give us the room. They left without argument. When the door closed, Victor sagged against the table. We found who did it, he said quietly. Carlo Messina. New York family. He's been trying to move into Boston for years, saw my transition toward legitimate business as weakness. So he blew up a warehouse? Elena crossed to him, took his hands in hers. They were cold. He made a statement. Killed my people, destroyed property, showed he could strike at the heart of my operation. Victor's voice was hollow. 4 people dead, Elena. Tony Marchetti's cousin was one of them. 23 years old, just married, his wife's pregnant. Elena pulled him close, felt him shake. I'm sorry. It's my fault. I made us vulnerable trying to go legitimate. Messina saw an opening and took it. This isn't your fault. It's always my fault? He pulled away, started pacing. Every decision I make, people die. I try to be better. More people die. I try to protect everyone. I can't. I'm failing and people are paying the price. Victor, you should leave, both of you. He wouldn't look at them. This is going to get bloody. Messina won't stop until one of us is dead. I won't risk you being caught in it. Sophia spoke before Elena could. We're not leaving, so stop being dramatic and start being strategic. What's your plan? Kill Messina before he kills more of my people. And after that? What about his organization, his allies? You can't just cut the head off and expect the body to die. Then I'll kill them too. Victor's voice was ice. All of them. Anyone who threatens what's mine. Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach. This was the other side of Victor, the part that had ordered executions at 17, that had built an empire on ruthlessness. She'd known it existed, but she'd never seen it so clearly. That's not a plan, she said quietly. That's revenge. What would you have me do? Let them keep killing my people? Show weakness so others think they can do the same? No. I'd have you be smarter than they are. Elena moved to stand in front of him, forced him to look at her. Messina wants a war because he thinks he can win, so don't give him a war. Give him something he doesn't expect. Like what? An alliance, or a buyout, or evidence that goes to the FBI if anything happens to you. She was thinking out loud now, journalist instincts kicking in. You said you want to go legitimate, so be legitimate. Use lawyers and contracts and legal pressure instead of bullets. That's not how this world works. Then change how it works. Elena grabbed his face, made him focus on her. You're Victor Castellano. You've survived 2 decades in an impossible situation. You've built something from nothing. You're brilliant and strategic, and you've been playing defense your whole life. It's time to play offense differently. Sophia was nodding. She's right. Messina's expecting violence. Give him bureaucracy. Tie him up in legal battles. Make taking you down so expensive and complicated it's not worth it. And if that doesn't work, then you do what you have to do, but try the smart way first. Elena's voice was firm. I fell in love with a man who was trying to be better. Don't abandon that because someone pushed back. Victor looked between them, something shifting in his expression. The desperation faded, replaced by calculation. I'd need leverage. Something Messina wants more than Boston territory. What does he want? Sophia asked. Victor thought for a moment. Recognition, legitimacy. His family's always been the smaller operation, the one other families look down on. He wants respect. So give it to him, on your terms. Elena's mind was racing. Make him an offer he can't refuse, not through threats, but through opportunity. They spent the next 3 hours plotting. Elena had never seen Victor and Sophia work together before. It was like watching two chess masters play simultaneous games. They knew every player, every resource, every possible angle. And slowly, a plan emerged. Victor would approach Messina not as an enemy, but as a potential partner. Offer him a piece of the legitimate businesses that were growing, a seat at the table, recognition from the other families through Victor's endorsement. In exchange, Messina would back off Boston, compensate the families of those killed, and enter a binding agreement that any future attacks would trigger a coordinated response from all of Victor's allies. He'll never go for it, Victor said, not after making such a bold move. He will if the alternative is worse, Sophia replied. We leak information about his operations to the FBI. Nothing that implicates you, just enough to make his life very difficult. Make him choose between partnership and prison. That's risky. So is a war. Elena touched his arm. But this way, you have a chance of ending this without more people dying. Victor looked at her for a long moment. When did you become a strategist? When I fell in love with a mob boss. Had to adapt. She tried for a smile and was relieved when he returned it faintly. Okay, we try it your way. But if Messina refuses, then we deal with that when it happens. Elena squeezed his hand. One crisis at a time. The meeting with Messina was set for neutral ground, a hotel conference room in Providence, Rhode Island, with representatives from 3 other families as witnesses. Victor brought Michael and Anthony. Messina brought his own muscle. The tension in the room could have been cut with a knife. Elena wasn't allowed to attend. Too risky, Victor said. But she waited in a room 2 floors down with Sophia, both of them monitoring their phones for updates. He's going to be okay, Sophia said, though she sounded like she was convincing herself as much as Elena. I know. Elena didn't know, couldn't know. This could go a dozen different ways, most of them bad. An hour passed, then 2. Elena's phone finally buzzed. It worked. Coming home. V. The relief was so intense she felt dizzy. Sophia let out a breath she'd been holding. What did I tell you? Victor always survives. But when Victor walked into the hotel room 20 minutes later, he looked like survival had cost him. He pulled Elena into his arms and just held her, his heart racing against her ear. Tell me, she said quietly. Messina accepted. We have an agreement. Formal, witnessed, binding. He gets a stake in 3 of our legitimate operations, gets presented to the families at the next council meeting, gets what he wanted. In exchange, the attacks stop, he pays restitution to the families who lost people, and we have mutual protection clauses. That's good. That's what we wanted. I know. But Victor's voice was strained. Elena, I had to give him something else. Something I didn't plan on. Her stomach tightened. What? Information about the transition. How we're moving operations toward legitimate business, the timeline, the structure. He wanted insurance that I wasn't going to undercut him once he was invested. Is that bad? It means I'm locked in now. I can't go back to the old way of doing things without violating the agreement. If I do, every family in the Northeast will come down on me. Victor pulled back to look at her. You wanted me to change, to evolve. Now I don't have a choice. I have to see it through. Elena searched his face. Are you angry about that? No, I'm terrified. He said it so quietly she almost missed it. I've spent my entire adult life knowing exactly how to survive in this world. Now I'm changing all the rules, and I don't know if I can pull it off. You're not doing it alone. Elena took his face in her hands. You have me. You have Sophia. You have people who believe in you. We'll figure it out together. And if I fail, if this all falls apart, then we pick up the pieces and try again. She kissed him softly. But you won't fail. You're too stubborn for that. He laughed, surprising both of them. When did you become my voice of reason? Somewhere between the first assassination attempt and the exploding warehouse. Had to make myself useful somehow. They went back to Boston that night. Victor called another meeting, this time including everyone, from his inner circle to the people who ran his street-level operations. Elena sat beside him as he explained the agreement with Messina, the shift in strategy, what it meant for all of them. The resistance was immediate. People who'd spent decades operating one way didn't want to change. People who'd lost friends in the warehouse explosion wanted blood, not contracts. Victor let them talk, let them vent, and then he shut it down. I understand your anger, he said, his voice cutting through the noise. I share it. 4 people are dead because someone thought they could take what's ours. But killing Messina won't bring them back. It'll just start a war that kills more people, more sons, more brothers, more fathers. So we just let him get away with it? Someone shouted from the back. No. We make him pay in ways that matter. He compensates the families. He acknowledges our strength. And he enters an agreement that makes him dependent on our success. We don't just win, we make him need us to win. Victor paused. That's power. Real power. Not just violence. Michael spoke up. And if he breaks the agreement, then we have every family in the Northeast backing our response. We won't be fighting alone. Victor's eyes were hard. I'm not going soft. I'm getting smart. There's a difference. The room was quiet for a moment, people processing. Then Frank, the lawyer, spoke. I've reviewed the agreement. It's solid, better terms than I expected. If we honor it, we come out stronger than we went in. One by one, the others nodded. Not everyone was happy. Elena could see the dissent in some faces, but they were backing Victor's play. That was enough. After the meeting, Anthony pulled Victor aside. Elena couldn't hear the conversation, but she saw Anthony's body language, tense, uncomfortable. When Victor came back, his expression was troubled. What's wrong? Anthony thinks I'm making a mistake, that showing mercy to Messina makes me look weak. Do you think that? I think I'm tired of strength being measured in bodies. Victor rubbed his face. I've killed people, Elena. Ordered deaths, watched men die. I thought that was what leadership looked like. But maybe it's just what survival looked like. Maybe actual leadership is finding a way forward that doesn't require constant bloodshed. That's growth, that's good. Or it's naivety that's going to get us all killed. He looked at her. I'm gambling everything on this new approach. Your approach. If it fails, it won't fail. Elena said it with more confidence than she felt. But even if it does, at least you tried. At least you chose something different than the path your father laid out. My father would have killed Messina and everyone in his organization, would have made an example so brutal no one would ever challenge us again. Your father's empire fell apart within 5 years of his death. Yours is still standing 20 years later. Elena moved closer. You're not your father, Victor. You're better than him. Stop measuring yourself against his brutality and start measuring yourself against your own standards. He pulled her close, and they stood there in the empty meeting room, holding each other while the weight of what they'd set in motion settled around them. The next few weeks were tense. The agreement with Messina held, but barely. There were small violations, territory disputes, miscommunications, moments where it seemed like everything would collapse. Each time Victor negotiated instead of retaliating, used lawyers and mediators instead of muscle. It was exhausting. Elena watched him work himself to the bone, managing personalities and egos and threats that came from all directions. He lost weight, slept less, drank more. You're killing yourself, she said one night, finding him in his office at 2 a.m, papers spread everywhere. I'm building something new. It takes work. It takes rest, too. You can't sustain this pace. I don't have a choice. He didn't look up from the contracts he was reviewing. If I show any weakness now, it all falls apart. Elena walked over, gently took the papers from his hands. Take a break, please. Elena, I'm not asking. You're going to burn out. And then where will we be? She pulled him to his feet. Come to bed. The papers will still be here tomorrow. He followed reluctantly, and she could feel the tension in his body as they lay down. He was wound so tight she thought he might snap. Talk to me, she said quietly. What's really going on? I'm scared. He said it so softly she almost missed it. I've been in control my whole life. Knew exactly what to do, how to respond, who to trust. Now I'm making it up as I go, hoping I'm not leading everyone off a cliff. You're not making it up. You're adapting. That's different. Is it? Because it feels the same. Victor turned to face her. What if this whole thing, going legitimate, partnering with Messina, trying to be better, what if it's just a fantasy? What if you can't really change what I am? You can't change where you came from, but you can change where you're going. Elena touched his face. I've watched you these past weeks. You're building something real. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's scary. But it's working. 4 people are still dead, and you're honoring them by making sure their deaths mean something, by changing the system that got them killed. She kissed him softly. You can't save everyone, Victor, but you can save the next person, and the one after that. That's all anyone can do. He pulled her closer, burying his face in her hair. I don't deserve you. You keep saying that. Maybe start believing you do. They fell asleep like that, tangled together, and for the first time in weeks, Victor slept through the night. The turning point came 6 weeks after the Messina agreement. One of Victor's legitimate businesses, a construction company, won a major contract to renovate a public school in Dorchester. The contract was clean, competed for fairly, won on merit. The first completely legitimate major win since the transition started. Victor called Elena from the office, and she could hear the smile in his voice. We did it. First real success that has nothing to do with the old business. That's amazing. We should celebrate. I'm taking you to dinner, somewhere nice. Wear that blue dress I like. They went to a restaurant on Newbury Street, expensive and exclusive, the kind of place where reservations took months. Victor had gotten them a table with one phone call. Some things didn't change. To new beginnings, Elena said, raising her glass. To you, Victor replied. None of this happens without you. I didn't do anything except push you to try. You gave me permission to want something different. That's everything. He reached across the table, took her hand. I've spent my whole life doing what I had to do. You made me realize I could want more. Could be more. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. You were always more. You just needed to believe it. They were finishing dessert when Victor's phone rang. He glanced at it, frowned. I need to take this. I'll be right back. He stepped outside, and Elena watched through the window as his expression changed. Anger first, then something that looked like fear. He was back at the table within 2 minutes. We need to go. Now. What's wrong? That was Anthony. Someone broke into your apartment, tore the place apart. Elena's blood went cold. Mara, she's fine. She wasn't home, but someone was looking for something. They were in the car within minutes, Victor driving faster than was safe, phone pressed to his ear coordinating security. When they reached Elena's building, there were already 3 of Victor's men stationed outside. The apartment looked like a disaster zone. Furniture overturned, paper scattered, her laptop smashed on the floor. Someone had been thorough and violent. What were they looking for? Elena asked, standing in the wreckage of her home. You tell me. Victor was already on the phone with Anthony, coordinating a sweep of the building. What do you have here that someone would want? Elena's mind raced. Files from old investigations, notes on current pieces, research materials, but nothing that should warrant this kind of violence. Then she saw it. The drawer where she kept her backup drives, the ones with all her unpublished work, including the original Harmon piece with all the source documents, was forced open. The drives were gone. My files. They took my investigative files. Victor went very still. Which investigations? All of them. Everything I've ever worked on. Elena felt sick. Including stuff about the Castellano family. Research I did when we first met, background on your operations, connections I mapped out. You researched me? I'm a journalist, Victor. Of course I researched you. Elena turned to face him. But I never published any of it, never even planned to. It was just for my own understanding. But now someone else has it. Victor's jaw was tight. Every detail of my organization, my people, My operations? In the hands of whoever broke in here. The implication settled like lead in Elena's stomach. She'd just handed someone a blueprint to destroy everything Victor had built. I'm sorry. Elena's voice cracked. Victor, I'm so sorry. I should have told you I kept those files. I should have... Stop. He pulled her close, and she could feel his heart racing. This isn't your fault. You were doing your job, being a journalist. A journalist who just compromised everything you've built. We don't know that yet, but his voice was tight. Anthony, I need everyone on this. Find out who broke in, where those drives are going, who hired them. I want answers within 12 hours. The next few hours were chaos. Victor's people swept the building, interviewed neighbors, pulled security footage from nearby cameras. Elena sat on her destroyed couch, Mara beside her, both of them in shock. I can't believe someone broke into our home, Mara said, her voice shaking. What if I'd been here? You weren't. That's what matters. But Elena felt the guilt crushing her. This was her fault. Her research, her files, her connection to Victor that had painted a target on their door. Victor came back around midnight, his expression grim. We have footage. 2 men, professionals. They knew exactly where to look, exactly what they wanted. This wasn't random. Who sent them? That's what we're going to find out. He turned to Mara. I'm having you move to a hotel. Secure location, security detail, until we know what we're dealing with. I don't need Yes, you do. Victor's voice was firm. Elena's apartment was targeted because of me. I won't risk you getting caught in the crossfire. Mara looked at Elena, who nodded. Please, just until this is over. 20 minutes later, Mara was packed and being escorted out by 2 of Victor's men who looked like they could stop a tank. Elena and Victor were left alone in the wreckage of her apartment. You can't stay here, Victor said. I know. Move in with me, officially. The penthouse has security, cameras, people watching 24/7. Elena looked at him. That's a big step. Someone just stole intelligence that could destroy my organization and hurt the people I love. I'm past worrying about whether we're moving too fast. He took her hands. I want you where I can protect you, where I know you're safe. She should have felt trapped, should have felt like she was losing her independence. Instead, she just felt tired. Okay, but just until we figure this out, we'll see. There was the ghost of a smile on his face. You might like living with me. They went to Victor's penthouse. Elena had stayed there before, but moving in felt different, more permanent, more real. She unpacked her hastily grabbed clothes while Victor made phone calls, coordinating the search for her stolen files. Around 2 a.m, he finally came to bed. She was still awake, staring at the ceiling, mind racing. Talk to me, he said quietly. I keep thinking about what's in those files. Names, dates, connections. If someone wanted to take you down, I just gave them everything they'd need. Then we find them first, get the files back before they can use them. And if we can't? Victor was quiet for a moment. Then we deal with the consequences. Together. You should be furious with me. I am. A little. He turned to face her. But mostly, I'm angry at myself for not seeing this coming, for not protecting you better. I don't need protection. I need to fix this. Elena sat up. Those are my files, my research. This is my mistake to clean up. Elena, no, I'm not sitting on the sidelines while you handle this. I know what's in those files better than anyone. I can help. Victor studied her face. What are you proposing? Let me work with Anthony and your tech people. Let me help track down who took them and why. I know how journalists think, how investigators work. I might see something your people miss. It's dangerous. Everything about your life is dangerous. I knew that when I chose to stay. She took his hand. Let me be useful. Let me be a partner, not something you have to protect. After a long moment, Victor nodded. Okay, but you work from here, from secure locations. No going off alone, no taking risks without backup. Deal. They started in the morning. Anthony set up a command center in Victor's dining room, bringing in computers, files, surveillance equipment. Elena sat with Victor's tech specialist, a woman named Nina, who looked about 20 but apparently could hack anything. Your files were encrypted, Nina said, fingers flying across the keyboard. But not well enough. Whoever took them has probably already cracked the protection. How long would that take? With the right resources? A few hours. They've had the drives for 14 hours now. Nina pulled up a series of windows filled with code. But here's the thing. I've been monitoring the dark web, places where stolen intel gets traded. Nothing's shown up yet. What does that mean? Either they haven't cracked it, which is unlikely, or they're not trying to sell it. They want it for themselves. Anthony spoke up from across the room. We've identified the two men from the security footage. Franco and Marcus DeLuca, brothers out of Providence. They're hired muscle, work for whoever pays. Can we find them? Already did. They're dead. Bodies found in a warehouse this morning, execution style. Elena felt her stomach turn. Someone killed them to cover their tracks, which means whoever's behind this is serious and connected. Victor was pacing, his mind clearly working through scenarios. They hire professionals, steal the files, then kill the professionals to eliminate loose ends. This is sophisticated. Could it be Messina? Elena asked. Breaking the agreement? Possible. But this doesn't feel like his style. Victor stopped pacing. Messina's direct. He'd come at me head on, not through stolen files. Then who? The question hung in the air, unanswered. Elena spent the next 2 days working with Nina and Anthony, trying to trace the digital breadcrumbs. She reviewed everything she could remember from her research files, flagging the most damaging information. Names of corrupt officials on Victor's payroll, details about money laundering operations, connections between legitimate businesses and criminal enterprises. If this goes public, she said during one of their briefings, it doesn't just hurt you. It brings down a lot of other people too. Politicians, business owners, cops. Which gives us leverage, Anthony said. Some of those people have more to lose than we do. Are you suggesting we blackmail them into helping? I'm suggesting we remind them that we're all in this together. If Victor goes down, he takes a lot of people with him. Anthony looked at Victor. We could use that. Victor shook his head. No. We find who stole the files and neutralize the threat. I'm not building leverage on other people's fear. That's exactly what I'm trying to move away from. Boss, with all respect, this might not be the time for principles. It's exactly the time for principles. If I abandon them every time things get hard, what's the point of trying to change? Victor's voice was firm. We do this the right way. We find the threat, we eliminate it, and we don't become the thing we're trying to stop being. Elena felt something warm settle in her chest. This was why she loved him, not despite his complications, but because of his determination to be better than his circumstances demanded. The break came on the third day. Nina found a digital signature in the hack of Elena's drives, a specific pattern of code that matched another hack from 6 months earlier, a hack targeting one of Messina's operations. Someone's going after both of you, Nina said. This isn't about Boston territory or business disputes. This is someone trying to destabilize the whole power structure. Victor and Elena exchanged looks. We need to talk to Messina, Elena said. The meeting was arranged for that evening, back in Providence, same neutral ground as before. This time, Elena went with Victor. If her files were the weapon being used against both families, she needed to be part of the solution. Messina was already there when they arrived, looking as unhappy as Victor did. They sat across from each other, mutual suspicion thick in the air. Someone stole intelligence from both our organizations, Victor said without preamble. Files that could damage both of us. I'm proposing we work together to find out who. Messina's eyes narrowed. Why would I trust you? Because I have nothing to gain by attacking you this way. Our agreement benefits me. I don't want it destroyed. Victor slid a folder across the table. Nina found the digital signature. Same hacker hit both of us. This isn't about our conflict. Someone else is playing us. Messina reviewed the documents, his expression darkening. Giovanni Russo. You know him? Old family out of Chicago. They've been trying to expand east for years, but the established families blocked them out. Messina looked up. If Russo can destabilize both of us, create chaos in the Northeast, he walks in and takes over while we're tearing each other apart. Elena leaned forward. So he steals files that incriminate both families, sits back, and waits for you to destroy each other. Which almost worked, Victor said. If Nina hadn't found the signature, we'd be at war right now. Messina was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, poured 3 glasses of whiskey, and handed one to each of them. To mutual enemies making strange allies. They drank. It wasn't trust, not yet, but it was acknowledgement that they had a common problem. We need to find Russo before he uses those files, Victor said. Once the information goes public, the damage is done. Police will have to act, prosecutors will have to investigate. Even if we survive legally, the exposure cripples both our operations. Agreed. But Russo's in Chicago, surrounded by his own people. Getting to him won't be easy. Then we don't get to him. We get to the files first. Elena had been thinking about this. Russo needs leverage. He can't use the information until he's ready to make his move. That means he's keeping it somewhere safe, somewhere he can access it when the time is right. You're suggesting we steal it back? Messina looked skeptical. I'm suggesting we find it and destroy it before he can use it. Elena turned to Victor. You said you wanted to do things differently. This is different. No violence, no war, just good old-fashioned intelligence work. Victor smiled slightly. You're learning. The plan came together over the next few hours. Messina had contacts in Chicago, people who could watch Russo's movements. Victor had Nina, who could track digital footprints. Elena had her investigative skills, the ability to piece together patterns from disparate information. They worked through the night, 3 former enemies united by necessity. Elena watched the dynamic shift, Messina and Victor finding common ground, discovering they had similar problems, similar goals. By dawn, they weren't exactly friends, but they were something close to partners. Russo keeps his most sensitive material in a safety deposit box, Messina announced after a series of phone calls. First National Bank of Chicago, under an assumed name. He visits every Tuesday morning, 9 a.m.
But sis,
Can your people get access? Victor asked. Not legally, and the bank's security is tight. We'd need someone he wouldn't suspect, someone who could get in without raising alarms. Elena felt an idea forming. What if we didn't steal the files? What if we just proved they existed and forced Russo's hand? Both men looked at her. Explain, Victor said. Russo's power is in secrecy. He has leverage because no one knows he has leverage. But what if we leak that he has stolen intelligence? Make it public knowledge. Suddenly, everyone knows he's got dirt, which means everyone's watching him. He can't use the files without everyone knowing he was behind the theft. That doesn't get the files back, Messina pointed out. No, but it neutralizes them. If Russo releases the information, everyone knows it came from stolen files. It's tainted evidence. Less credible, easier to defend against. Elena was thinking out loud now. And more importantly, it puts pressure on Russo from every direction. The families will demand he turn over what he stole. The FBI will investigate the theft. He becomes the story instead of the information. Victor was nodding slowly. It's not perfect, but it might work. It's risky, Messina said. We're gambling that the exposure hurts Russo more than the content of the files hurts us. Do you have a better idea? Messina smiled grimly. No, which is why I'm willing to try yours. They executed the plan 48 hours later. Messina had a contact at a major newspaper in Chicago. Not a journalist he owned, but one he'd helped in the past with information on corrupt city officials. The reporter owed him a favor. The story ran on a Wednesday morning. Chicago crime boss accused of industrial espionage. It detailed how Giovanni Russo had allegedly stolen intelligence from multiple East Coast crime families, was holding the information as leverage, and was using it to plan an expansion into Boston and New York. The story didn't reveal what was in the stolen files. Elena had been careful about that, but it named Russo as the thief and made the theft itself the scandal. The reaction was immediate. Other families demanded explanations. The FBI opened an investigation into the theft itself. Russo's allies started distancing themselves, not wanting to be connected to what looked like a reckless power grab. And most importantly, Russo couldn't use the files without confirming the story. The moment he released any information, he'd be admitting he'd stolen it, which would bring down the wrath of every family in the country. He's trapped, Nina reported 3 days after the story broke. His own people are pressuring him to return the files to prove he's not trying to start a war. The Chicago Commission called an emergency meeting. What happened? Elena asked. Russo was forced to turn over all the stolen material to neutral mediators. It's being destroyed under supervision of 3 commission members. Nina grinned. Your files are gone. Burned. No longer a threat. Elena felt relief wash over her so intensely she had to sit down. It's over? It's over, Victor confirmed. He'd been on the phone with his own sources, getting the same information. Russo's been stripped of his territory, forced into early retirement. His organization is being broken up and redistributed. He overplayed his hand, and it cost him everything. Messina called an hour later. Well played, Ward. You've got a devious mind. I'm a journalist. We're trained to think about information as currency. Maybe you should consider a career change. You'd make a good strategist. I think I'll stick with writing. Less chance of getting shot. In your life, I wouldn't count on it. But Messina was laughing. Castellano, you've got a good woman there. Don't screw it up. I'm trying not to, Victor said, looking at Elena. After the call ended, they sat in silence for a moment. The threat was over. The files were destroyed. They'd survived. I need to ask you something, Victor said finally. Those files you had, how much did you know about my organization before we started dating? Elena had been expecting this question. Enough to know what you were, not enough to judge whether you were worth knowing. And now? Now I know you're both more complicated and more human than any file could capture. She moved closer to him. The files showed me your organization. You showed me yourself. There's a difference. I want you to write about this. About all of it. Victor's voice was serious. Not the specific details that would incriminate anyone, but the bigger picture. What you've learned about this world, about how it actually works, about the people in it. That would be dangerous. Everything we do is dangerous. But you're a writer. You should write. He took her hands. Tell the truth, Elena. The real truth. Not the Hollywood version. Show people that this world is more complicated than they think. That the people in it are more human. And you're okay with me potentially making you look bad? I trust you to be fair. That's all I ask. He smiled slightly. Besides, you've seen me at my worst. If you were going to write a hit piece, you'd have done it already. Elena thought about it. A real honest look at organized crime, written from the inside. The kind of piece she'd always wanted to write but never had access to. I'd need editorial independence, complete control over what goes in. You'd have it. And you'd have to accept that I might include things that make you uncomfortable. I'm already uncomfortable most of the time. What's a little more? She kissed him, soft and slow. Then I'll write it. But on one condition. What's that? You tell me everything. No more secrets, no more protected information. If I'm going to write the truth, I need to know all of it. Victor pulled her close. Deal. Complete honesty. Even the ugly parts. They spent the next 3 months in a strange kind of peace. Elena worked on her article, interviewing Victor, Sophia, Anthony, even Messina. She talked to people whose lives had been affected by the organization, some positively, some negatively. She followed the money, traced the connections, built a comprehensive picture of how modern organized crime actually functioned. Victor continued his transition toward legitimacy. More legal businesses, fewer criminal operations. It wasn't perfect. Some things couldn't be made legal without abandoning people who depended on the organization. But it was progress. And somewhere in the middle of all that work, they built a life together. Elena moved into the penthouse officially, making it feel less like a showroom and more like a home. She added color, comfort, books everywhere. Victor pretended to complain, but she caught him smiling at the changes. They had dinner with Sophia once a week, the three of them arguing about everything from politics to pasta sauce. Elena met more of Victor's world, not just the criminals, but the families they supported, the communities they were part of, the complicated web of loyalty and obligation that held everything together. She started to understand that Victor wasn't just running a criminal empire. He was managing an ecosystem of people who had nowhere else to turn. People the legitimate world had failed or forgotten. It didn't excuse the violence or the crime, but it explained it in ways she'd never considered. The article came together slowly. Elena wrote and rewrote, trying to capture the complexity without sensationalizing or excusing. It was the hardest piece she'd ever worked on, and the most important. When it was finally done, she showed it to Victor first. He read it in silence, his expression unreadable. When he finished, he set it down and looked at her. This is brutal. I know. You don't pull any punches. You talk about the violence, the moral compromises, the damage we cause. I do. Elena's heart was racing, But I also talk about the context, the reasons, the humanity underneath. You make me look human. Flawed, but human. Victor's voice was quiet. I wasn't expecting that. Did you want me to make you look perfect? No, I wanted you to tell the truth. And you did. He pulled her onto his lap. Publish it. Let people see what this world really is. The piece ran in a major investigative journalism magazine, the same one that had published her Harmon article. It was long, detailed, unflinching. It showed Victor's world in all its complexity, refusing to simplify it into heroes and villains. The response was immediate and polarizing. Some people called Elena an apologist for criminals. Others praised her for humanizing a world usually shown only in stereotypes. The article sparked debates about organized crime, about the failure of legitimate institutions, about the communities caught in between, and it established Elena as a serious investigative journalist again. Offers came in, book deals, speaking engagements, positions at major publications. Her career, which had seemed dead 2 months ago, was suddenly very much alive. You could take the job at the Times, Victor said one evening, reading through her offers. Move to New York, build your career there. Are you trying to get rid of me? I'm trying to make sure you don't give up your dreams for me. He looked at her seriously. I won't be the reason you stop being who you are. Elena took the papers from him, set them aside. I don't want to work for the Times. I want to keep doing what I'm doing. Independent investigations, pieces that matter. I can do that from anywhere. Even from Boston? Even while dating a mob boss? Especially while dating a mob boss. Turns out I have pretty good access to stories most journalists can't get. She smiled. Besides, you're not just a mob boss anymore. You're a mob boss trying to reform. That's even more interesting. Reform is a strong word. Evolution, then. Transformation, whatever you want to call it. She climbed onto the couch beside him. The point is, you're building something new, and I want to be here to see it. Victor pulled her close. I love you. I know. She kissed him softly. I love you too, even when you're driving me crazy. Especially then. They laughed and it felt normal, like they were just a regular couple navigating life together, not a journalist and a crime boss trying to build something impossible. 6 months after the article published, Victor proposed. It wasn't dramatic or elaborate. They were at the cliff in Maine, the place where he'd first told her about his mother. The sun was setting over the ocean, painting everything gold. I want to marry you, he said. No preamble, no ceremony. Not because I think I own you, or because I want to possess you, but because you're my partner, my equal, the person who sees all of me and chooses to stay anyway. He pulled out a ring, simple, elegant, perfect. I know what people will say, that you're crazy for marrying someone like me, that I'm dangerous, that this life is impossible, and they're not wrong. But I also know that I'm better with you than without you, that you make me want to be more than what my father built, that you give me hope for something different. Elena felt tears on her cheeks. Yes. You haven't heard the whole proposal yet. I don't need to. Yes. 1,000 times yes. Victor slipped the ring on her finger, and it fit perfectly. Of course it did. He'd probably measured her finger while she was sleeping. They got married 3 months later, small ceremony in Sophia's garden in New York. No press, no spectacle, just family. Sophia, Marco, Anthony, a handful of people from both their lives who mattered. Mara was Elena's maid of honor, crying through the entire ceremony. The vows were simple. Elena promised to be honest, even when the truth was hard. Victor promised to choose growth over comfort, to keep evolving even when it was difficult. They promised to be partners, to face whatever came together. It wasn't traditional. Nothing about their relationship was. But it was real. The first year of marriage was hard. Victor's transition continued, slowly and imperfectly. There were setbacks, operations that couldn't be legitimized, people who refused to change, moments where violence was the only language anyone understood. Elena kept writing, kept investigating, kept holding both Victor and his organization accountable. She published a follow-up article about the challenges of going legitimate, the institutional barriers, the way society made it almost impossible for people in Victor's position to actually change. The piece sparked policy discussions. Some cities started pilot programs for helping criminal organizations transition to legitimate business. It wasn't a solution, but it was progress. And slowly, against all odds, Victor's experiment started working. The legitimate businesses grew. The criminal operations shrank. People started seeing the Castellano name as something other than a threat. It wasn't redemption. Victor was clear about that. "I've done too much to be redeemed," he said when Elena asked. "But maybe I can be useful. Maybe I can take everything I learned from the old life and build something better." 2 years after they married, Elena got pregnant. She'd been terrified to tell Victor, worried about bringing a child into their complicated world, but when she finally worked up the courage, his reaction surprised her. "A baby," he said, his hand on her still flat stomach, his eyes wet. "We're having a baby. Are you okay with this? I know we didn't plan. I'm more than okay. He pulled her close. "I never thought I'd have this. A family built on choice instead of obligation. A child who might actually get to choose their own path. They'll still be a Castellano. That comes with baggage. Then we make sure the baggage is worth carrying. We build something they can be proud of instead of ashamed of." Victor kissed her softly. "We give them what I never had. Options." Their daughter was born on a Tuesday in October, 7 pounds and screaming at the world. They named her Grace, after Victor's mother. Holding her for the first time, Victor cried. Elena had never seen him cry before, not like this. "I'm going to do better for her," he whispered. "I'm going to build a world she doesn't have to be afraid of." "We're going to do better," Elena corrected. "Together." They did. Over the next few years, Victor systematically dismantled the criminal empire his father had built, replacing it piece by piece with legitimate businesses and community investments. It took time, cost him relationships with people who couldn't or wouldn't change, required compromises Elena knew haunted him. But he did it. Not perfectly, not without setbacks, but he did it. By the time Grace was 5, Victor was known less as a mob boss and more as a philanthropist. He'd started a foundation for families affected by violence, both criminal and otherwise, funded education programs in underserved communities, used his connections and resources to build bridges instead of walls. Elena continued writing, documenting the transformation with the same unflinching honesty she'd always used. She published a book, The Evolution of Power, One Family's Journey from Crime to Community, that became required reading in criminology courses across the country. People asked her constantly how she could have married someone like Victor, how she could raise a child in that world, how she could reconcile the man she loved with the things he'd done. She always gave the same answer. "He's not perfect. He's done things I can't defend, but he's also spent every day since I met him trying to be better than he was yesterday. That's all any of us can do. Try to be better, choose growth over comfort, build something meaningful from our mistakes." On Grace's 7th birthday, they went back to the cliff in Maine. The 3 of them, plus Sophia who'd flown in for the occasion, stood watching the sunset over the ocean. "Your grandmother would have loved this place," Victor told Grace, holding her hand. "She would have loved you." "Tell me about her," Grace said. She asked every time they came here, and Victor told the stories every time, like a ritual. As he talked, Elena watched her husband, this man who'd been forged in violence and obligation, who'd chosen something different, who'd built a life worth living instead of just surviving. He wasn't the same person she'd met at that gala 7 years ago. Neither was she. They'd changed each other, challenged each other, built something neither could have created alone. "What are you thinking about?" Sophia asked quietly, standing beside Elena while Victor and Grace explored the rocks near the cliff edge. "How strange life is. How all the things that seemed impossible become normal. How love changes everything, even when you think you're too broken to change. You changed him, you know. Victor was headed down a dark path before you. You gave him a reason to want something different. He changed himself. I just showed him it was possible." Sophia smiled. "That's love, isn't it? Not fixing someone, but showing them they're worth the effort of fixing themselves." That night, after Grace was asleep and the house was quiet, Elena and Victor sat on the deck overlooking the ocean. They didn't talk much anymore, didn't need to. 7 years of honesty had built a foundation where silence was comfortable instead of tense. "Do you ever regret it?" Victor asked finally. "Choosing this life, choosing me?" Elena thought about it, about the fear, the danger, the compromises. About the nights she'd lain awake wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. About the moments she'd questioned everything. "No," she said finally. "It's been hard. It's been scary. But it's been real. And I'd rather have a real, complicated life with you than a safe, simple life with anyone else. Even knowing what you know now, what it cost. Especially knowing that. Because I also know what we built, what we created together." She took his hand. "You're not your father, Victor. You broke that cycle. You gave Grace something different. That matters. I couldn't have done it without you." "You could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to." They sat in silence, watching the stars emerge over the ocean. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Victor's businesses, Elena's writing, the constant work of being better than they were yesterday. But tonight, they just existed. Together, imperfect and complicated and real. And that, Elena thought, was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Years later, when Grace was grown and building her own life, a lawyer, fighting for criminal justice reform, using her father's complicated legacy as fuel for change, Elena would write one final piece about their story. It wasn't sentimental or romanticized. It was honest about the cost, the compromises, the moments where they'd almost lost each other. But it was also clear about what they'd built, a partnership based on honesty, growth, and the radical belief that people could change if given the chance. The piece ended with the simple truth. Love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone worth the struggle of becoming better. It's about choosing each other every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Victor read it when it published, then pulled Elena close. "You made us sound almost noble." "I made us sound human. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm standing, being human, really human, with all the mess and complication, that might be the most noble thing we can do." Elena kissed him, this man who'd spent decades learning how to be more than what his world demanded. "Then I guess we're the noblest flawed people in Boston." "I'll take it." They laughed, and it was the sound of two people who'd found each other in impossible circumstances and built something worth keeping. Not perfect, never perfect, but real and earned, and theirs. And in the end, that was the whole point.